Welcome, everyone. My name is Jeff Harmon of Brilliance Within Coaching and Consulting, and in collaboration with Russo Partners, we're excited to bring you this Life Science Executive Roundtable for JPM 2024. We're at a really interesting time. We're about 2 years removed from returning to work post-COVID, and the financial environment for companies is such that they're being challenged to deliver with what they already have and without necessarily the ability to count on new levels of financing. And as we think about performing against and to expectations, leaders are constantly asking themselves what's going to translate into that high performance. It might be easy to say that high levels of employee engagement are going to translate into those levels of performance. But what we look at today is that that's not always so sure. That employee engagement, high levels of it, don't always translate to high levels of performance. And in today's roundtable conversation, we invited Nick Dyer from Catalyst Clinical Research, Dave Beers from Halia Therapeutics, and Simon Arkell from Wright Incorporated. And in this conversation, we pull this conversation apart around employee engagement and look at the nuances of it and what it means for an employee to be engaged and how that translates into how these CEOs are leading their organization. I think you're really going to enjoy this Life Science Executive Roundtable. Gentlemen, welcome. I am so excited to welcome you to this Executive Roundtable where we're going to explore this topic around engagement and performance. But before we dive into that, I'd love for our audience who's listening today, just for you to introduce yourselves. Dave, would you do that for us to start?
Sure, you bet. So my name is David Beers. I'm a cell biologist by training, and I currently am the founder and CEO of a company called Halia Therapeutics. Halia is working on a novel way to turn off chronic inflammation in a lot of different inflammatory diseases, such as neurodegenerative diseases, as well as diseases like cardiovascular disease.
Awesome. Welcome, Dave. Simon, would you go next?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. My name's Simon Arkell. I'm co-founder and CEO of Wright, which is RYGHT. And we're an artificial intelligence company focused on generative AI for the biopharma industry. So we have a tuned industry-specific platform to solve a whole range of problems in the industry using the new Gen AI.
Awesome. Welcome, Simon. And Nick.
My name is Nick Dyer. I'm the CEO at Catalyst Clinical Research as a CRO focused primarily in the oncology space, but we also have functional service provider models, etc., provided through our Catalyst Flex brand.
Awesome. Well, there's tons of experience in the room, and I'm excited to dive into this topic. And I'm going to put forward this maybe someone would say a counterintuitive truth. And I'd love for you each to respond to it, given your experience. And that counterintuitive truth is that employee engagement or high levels of employee engagement does not automatically translate into high performance. Simon, what do you think about that?
I actually think it's a really interesting concept. Obviously we always talk about employee engagement and getting people engaged in order to kind of optimize the business, but not necessarily the truth. I think back to my previous company, which was an oncology clinical trial company using AI to match patients to clinical trials. We had a specific type of user at our customer sites where we were deploying our AI software to community oncology programs, and actually did a bit of work with Catalyst and Nick's company. And we were deploying this technology to these sites so that they could get better insights into potential matches for their patients in real time to a trial that that patient should be on, and bring the trial to the site and hopefully get the patient consented and enrolled. And we found that there was this unique animal at the site called a CRC, or a clinical research coordinator. And because our focus specifically was in the community, these are areas that are not dominated by Mayo Clinic, MD Anderson, etc., but instead are just your small community provider. And they had a hell of a time finding these research coordinators who are absolutely vital to the process of running these clinical trials. And what we found was that these people were underpaid, overworked, very engaged and passionate, but completely overwhelmed all the time. And there were not enough of them at each site, and definitely the industry didn't have enough of them. So we found that even though they were doing their life work, their passion, they were fully engaged in the mission of saving lives through clinical research. And yes, they were incredibly engaged. They were massively burned out. And so I don't know that we solved the problem at a macro level, but we went in and realized very quickly that we needed to deploy our technology and actual services just to help them out. And I think there's this huge unlock opportunity to take these different cohorts of employee who are fully engaged, fully passionate about what they're doing, but somehow help them out with the use of better processes, maybe different motivations, technology, of course, and just additional help. And so, I think it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, I'm going to hold back on my questions because lots of stuff coming up. Dave or Nick, what you can either respond or add on to Simon or shed a different light on it.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in. So this is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. Obviously, when you're building a company, having engagement's really important. And I think one of the great things about our industry is it's easy for people to be engaged, because we the big picture of what we're trying to do is to deliver life-saving and life-altering medications to people, and that's easy for people to get behind, right? I think most people that we meet in this industry are excited and have chosen to be here for a reason, because they're connected to the idea of being able to develop something that can save people's lives. It's the whole reason I do what I do. Is the year I was born, my grandfather was diagnosed with colon cancer and died that year. Never knew my grandpa. I have one picture of him holding me, and that motivates me. And my mom died of colon cancer very young, so we have it in our family, and that motivates me. So those types of things I think are quite common in the industry, where people have chosen to work in this field because they're emotionally and intellectually connected to it. Now, how do we translate that into performance is another question. And one of the things that I think is challenging about our field, so we kind of have this double-edged sword, that everything we do is hard, is really, really hard, and it usually takes a long time. And having hard tasks that take a long time to keep people motivated and productive, we can have them engaged and they love what they do, but at the same time, the metrics that we use to measure performance and how we can keep people feeling like they're making progress toward this big giant task that we're trying to accomplish, it's not an easy thing. And one of the things that we try to do is break it up into pieces and try to make people feel like, okay, this is the first step, let's get the first step done. But the challenge with doing that is then you start creating artificial incentives and artificial motivation that isn't, that kind of takes you away from what the big challenge or what the big motivation is. And so keeping that all together is not easy. And I think it's one of the things that we're constantly having to figure out. And at the end of the day, what I've learned is it really comes down to the culture of the company and those cultural norms and incentives that you put in place to keep people engaged and performing at the level that you want them to be at.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. Nick?
Well, no, I completely agree with Simon and Dave, actually. I think there are different things that can drive engagement. From our perspective as a service provider, a lot of organizations are focused on billable hours and just kind of grinding out the results, and that can become a little bit of a hamster wheel existence. So we try to work hard at trying to put in place some of the things that Dave talks about. I work for a company that cares about me. I work for a company that's going to give me resources that I need. I've got a manager who's only got 7 or 8 direct reports rather than 20, so they can actually have a conversation with me during the week. But then you get into the challenge, exactly as what Dave articulated, and you've got these long clinical trials. And in oncology, often 3 years is the shortest trial. And so giving meaning to that work and being able to then show that all of that hard work that you're putting in, all of that engagement is actually having an impact on the study that you're actively involved in. I think you have to find ways of bringing reminders into the workplace to showcase what people are achieving. Getting a site activated gives a chance for a patient to get an opportunity for a therapy they wouldn't have had, and so on and so forth. So I think that's really important. And as you get larger, it's easier for people to get distant from the work, from the big picture work that they've described. And so I feel that part of the challenge then is you can still have engaged employees that feel like they work for a company that cares about them, with a manager, etc. But you've got to really then engage middle management in a much more tangible way, and being able to show how those efforts turn into results to then drive that performance metric.
What I'm really getting from all three of you is it's not about the person. What I'm hearing from all of you is these are inspired, motivated, purposeful, engaged folks. And there's a breakdown that causes the disconnect at some points around their performance. Would you say that's true? I mean, there's obviously moments and times when there are personal, it's a wrong fit around the person. Mm-hmm. But what I'm hearing is it's not about the person. There's a breakdown along the way, whether a disconnect from the mission or a burnout or time. There's these other factors that are causing the breakdown, and where performance at some point might get impacted. Would you say that's true?
Well, I think you get a normal distribution amongst your employees. So there are some folks that just it doesn't matter what you give people, they're not going to perform for you. And I think the key is to not throw the baby out of the bathwater, because you experience those kind of tail end of the curve, so to speak, and to focus on moving the entire population forward. That is then about about those conversations that we were having about making sure that those folks really understand what the efforts are contributing to. But there is a process there. And as I said, I think the size of the organization contributes to that to some degree as well.
I think also we kind of have an unfair advantage, very unfortunately, because by focusing on oncology, you tend to attract people who are personally driven and mission driven, and the unfortunate part is we're all affected by cancer. Dave, gave 2 examples in his introduction, but I don't think there are too many people on the planet today that are not affected by cancer, but also those who are drawn to the industry are doing it because, their sister, their mother, their father, their grandfather died of cancer. It was obviously incredibly personally impacting. And so when you do the sort of work that that Nick and Dave do, we're literally saving lives. And we definitely felt that back at Deep Lens. We would bring a precision clinical trial to a remote oncology practice in the middle of nowhere that never, ever would have had access to that particular clinical trial, much less even identified that they had patients that could qualify for them. Then when we did that, and then we assisted in kind of triaging that patient and working with that practice to get the patient consented enrollment, it was an emotional experience for everyone. We really felt that we were saving lives, or at least contributing to that. And so I think there's this incredible camaraderie in the industry that you don't see. I came into healthcare 10 or 12 years ago and was absolutely blown away by how little ego is involved in just doing what is the right thing for the patient, regardless of whether there's a commercial benefit to you or not. And so that sort of collaboration, I think, leads to this camaraderie, which makes us probably an industry that is much more engaged. And so the burnout is, I hope, to a lesser extent, or if there is burnout, then you're able to go through the hard times in order to get through to the end goal because you're doing something that's super impactful, as opposed to, fixing windmills or putting up fences, which, those are great vocations to have possibly, but they don't have quite the same kind of emotion behind them as being in the oncology space.
Dave, just playing off of what both Nick and Simon have said, could the passion and the emotional connection actually hurt an employee or a team member in being able to contribute at the highest level that you need them to contribute?
Yeah, I'd say it's an interesting question. And one of the unfortunate realities of our work as well is that we have a lot of failure, that unfortunately most of the projects that we take even into the clinic don't make it to the finish line and actually result in an approved drug that could benefit millions of people. And that I think does create a lot of disincentives for people, because you can put your whole heart and soul into something and be engaged at the highest level, and then to see it not make it across the finish line. And there's always 100 reasons why drugs fail. There's not just one. And that's the hard part about it, is that new therapeutics, it's not like designing a car. Tesla doesn't have 10% of their cars don't drive, right? I mean, they're able to design them on the computer and do all the testing, and they always work, right? They know that they can go out and the engineering principles are well understood. We don't have that. And so we can have the most engaged, most dedicated, hardworking people, and the majority of our projects are still going to fail. And a lot of it is we still just don't know enough about human biology and the human diseases to know that if we inhibit this one pathway or target this one protein, that something positive is going to happen. And so I think that it can be, this, once again, this double-edged sword where you have everybody working and just focused and putting their heart and soul, and then to have something not work, it is tough. I mean, it's really, really hard. And I think Simon said, when you enroll a patient on a study, it's so exciting to think, something I designed, I made, I worked on, a real person's taking that medication, and then to have it not be successful and not do what you expected it to do. When you've created that kind of environment where everybody is so intellectually and emotionally attached to something that then fails, it's not easy to deal with that, right? And unfortunately in our industry, most people are never going to work on a project that actually works. And that's, think about that. That's very unusual. That doesn't happen in, I don't think, any other industry. I think we are probably unique in that regard, that some, I've talked to chemists that have worked their entire career in pharmaceutical companies, and they never worked on a compound that actually was approved and actually was a marketed drug. And that's just odd to think about, and how do you feel and keep that momentum that I love what I do, but what I'm doing actually is actually meaningful, right? And so it's it is a challenge to make sure that and I think I mentioned earlier, one of the hard things about as somebody trying to motivate and keep people focused on the big picture is, if you start creating incentives to say, well, who cares about the drug approval, and we're just going to focus on, let's treat that first patient and let's consider that to be a success. I mean, it is important to have intermediate successes along the way and to have these milestones, but it can't be the focus of the company, right? You can't have everybody just say, well, we got it to the finish line, but the finish line wasn't the finish line, right? It was actually the starting line that we got to. So it is one of these things that you have to figure out how to keep all these balls in the air at the same time, and it's not easy, especially when we have these setbacks and these challenges that happen. And what I've seen is that typically when we have something that fails, you actually lose a lot of people. They'll go look for something something else to do, because it's a big letdown in having all of this energy and focus, and then all of a sudden it doesn't make it to the finish line. So those are things that we think about every day, is how do we keep people engaged. I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is that every meeting that we have, every interaction that we have, we try to keep people looking at the big picture and focus. We're a science focused organization. It's the beating heart of our organization, and so we want to make sure people understand and are engaged in. And probably one of the things that I look back on in terms of employee engagement and performance, I had an accountant in our accounting department that I heard him having a conversation with somebody, and I would think, obviously I'm not an accountant. It's not something that's interesting to me by any means. That's not how I'm wired. But he was saying to somebody else in the company, the clinical trial can't happen without me. I am a critical component because I do the contracting and I make sure that that the bills are getting paid. And I was like, wow, that's incredible that he feels that engaged in he's not just looking at a spreadsheet, and he actually is engaged at a level and feels that his job is to enable the clinical trial to get underway, and that he's a critical component of that. And it's one of those things that you're just like, wow, okay, that worked, right? I mean, that's the level of performance that we look for, is somebody feel like they have something that meaningful to do in their day-to-day job, and it's not just, oh yeah, I write checks for vendors or whatever. It's that he's that focused and engaged on what he's doing. So that's the kind of stuff that we look towards and try to make sure everybody understands that every piece of this puzzle has to get put in place in order for this thing to work.
Dave, you opened the box around this. How do you do it? So I would love, Simon, maybe you could start, and then Nick, what is the how that you're experimenting with, playing with, to bridge this gap between what's required in the fundamentals, the execution, and engagement? What is your story around the how?
Well, I just started this company earlier this year, and we were very fortunate in that 6 VCs jumped into our deal and gave us the ability to get off the launch pad. We were able to pull together a team that had worked together before. They knew the mission, they knew the exciting opportunity in applying this new technology to this industry. And so I think that mission is quite obvious. The how for us is just full transparency and authenticity in the way we operate. We know each other. We can be blunt and direct with each other. We're only 20 people in the company at the moment, we've just released our platform product and have initial customers out there using it. But I think the how is just getting people to realize that we have a really unique opportunity. This is the third wave or major macro growth opportunity that I've seen in the technology industry since I started working. Obviously started with the internet and then mobile, and now this artificial intelligence explosion. And we started a company on day one at ground zero in this space, focusing exclusively on one of the biggest industries on the planet, which is biopharma and healthcare. But doing it with I think an unfair advantage, given that we have a team that's just done all of the right pieces that we can put together. So no one is under the illusion that this is going to be easy. Everyone realizes that this is a potential kind of life-changing opportunity once we pull it off. And so the how is just getting down to work, rolling up the sleeves, being completely open with each other, and pushing as hard as we know how, realizing that there will be some burnout and overwhelm along the way. Get really messy and dirty and direct with each other at times, but we're going to pull something off that could be amazing and help save lives along the way. So I don't think it's changed too much. The how is just getting to work and pulling this off, in a way that no one else can.
And Nick, you have a unique perspective, and you mentioned size. You're the largest organization of the 3 that are represented here. And you mentioned earlier this as an organization grows, you do get farther away from that heartbeat that Simon just pointed to when you're just 20. Could you speak a little bit about how you're seeing how in that as the organization is growing and employees are getting farther away from that heartbeat?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the same principles that Simon and Dave mentioned are still relevant. Transparency was one that both folks called out. You have to have a high degree of transparency to drive trust and that engagement that comes off the back of trust in an organization. At the end of the day, people are, they're giving you their time, but they're also giving you their careers and their livelihoods, and in some cases, the hopes and dreams that Dave mentioned around actually being involved in a therapy that can massively impact patients. So, there's trust is necessary, and so transparency from that in terms of what are our goals, what are we trying to achieve, how far or near are we in achieving those goals? We have to communicate all of that pretty routinely, and I think we've spoken before about our management system that we have, where our executive team come together every month, review how we're doing against our business goals, review the various performance metrics that we've agreed are really the key things that are driving the company forward. And then we communicate that every month, writing up a summary. We cascade that through our managers, make sure people are getting that into their hands so people across the organization are aware of what's going on. We used to do that by word of mouth. When it was 20 people, you'd gather everybody together and you'd give an update. It's a very natural process. As we get larger and you've then got people in the UK and Germany and Australia and India and the US, and you can't do that just natural kind of leadership style that one used to have. So it has to be more organized and more disciplined and regimented, but it's still driving transparency in the idea that you're giving information and updates to people to drive that high degree of trust.
I don't know why it didn't hit me earlier on, but what we're not talking about when we talk about engagement is people being happy, making people happy. We're talking, and all of you are talking about creating engagement being connection to mission, to the heartbeat, what's going on through transparency. What we're not talking about is making people happy. That's not the goal. And I think that's part of this misalignment around engagement and performance is people look at engagement. They think, oh, I have to make my employees happy. But that's not what we're talking about, is it, Dave?
Yeah, I think that that's a great point. And to me, I have never met somebody who isn't happy that feels like their job is meaningful, right? And this is what we tell people when they come to work with us is, I promise you'll be working on something that's a meaningful thing, right? That you're not just going to be a cog in some machine and you're just going to be turning a crank, right, all day long. You're going to have something meaningful to do that's going to directly impact the health and well-being of other people. And to me, that kind of opportunity, that's what makes people happy, right? They people that are miserable in their jobs are people that come home and say, it doesn't even matter whether I show up, like a robot could do my job, right? And there's nothing satisfying and nothing fulfilling about my day-to-day job. But to get people the vision to say, your job makes a difference, and whether it's that contracting with the vendor or the arranging meetings, to help people understand the big picture of how important their job is and what it does to make sure that this ultimate big goal that we're focused on, that we accomplish. And to me, that's where you get happy, engaged people is when they feel like what they're doing makes a difference. And the other thing that I was thinking about as we are having this discussion is, the other thing I've learned over the years, and I've hired and I've let go more people than I can think of, but what I've learned is you always get what you pay for as well. So when you reward things, you will get what you reward, right? So if you reward people that, and this is a hard thing about having passionate people, is passionate people tend to run hot sometimes, right? They get emotional and they get engaged in what they're doing. And when they feel like somebody's creating an obstacle that makes it so they can't do their job, there's some emotions that happen, and we tend to have people that get hot sometimes and say, hey, this person's standing in my way. I can't do my job. And if you reward that behavior, you're going to get everybody acting that way. And then you start to have an organization where people feel like, well, that guy caused a fuss and got ahead. And so that's how to get ahead in this organization. So we try to, as managers and as we build the organization, we make sure that people understand we pay for and reward performance, right? and you're not going to get rewarded for bad behavior. And even though you're passionate and engaged, if you use that passion to beat people over the head to try to get what you want done, we're not rewarding that behavior. We need everybody working together as a team, and this is really a team sport, right? I mean, what we do, there's very little individual contribution. Everybody has a piece of this that they have to be engaged. And so, we're very transparent and straightforward with people. Is we're not going to reward bad behavior. When we win, we all win together, and when we lose together as well. And that's the way it works. And so some of the kind of the performance metrics that you use in sales and some other areas where it's not exactly what we do, we tend not to use those kinds of measurements of performance and reward performance evaluation type of we tend to be much more focused on accomplishing goals as a team. And there's pluses and minuses about that as well, because people can always, and I think Nick said there's always a normal distribution of people, and there's high performers and low performers, and you can't completely get rid of that in an organization. But I think that tying people together in a way that people feel like they have a meaningful job and an opportunity to make a meaningful contribution to the overall goals of the company, that's where you get people engaged and performing well.
Hey, Dave, there's another element to what you were saying about that, the passion that boils over maybe and turns into passion again. I think one of the other observations I have is that a healthy organization is one where people don't have groupthink, where they can kind of they can challenge one another in obviously in a very constructive way, but you can have debate, you can have dialogue. We talk about people kind of poking each other in the chest a little bit and not having groupthink in our management meetings, and that feedback is a gift, and that if something's broken down and we need to push through a boundary together as a team to get the win, that we're not afraid to have those conversations. And I think that passion's important as long as it doesn't spill over into that bad behavior you described.
I completely agree. And I think that I tell everybody here, in every organization I've worked in, is I am perfectly capable of having terrible ideas, and I want people to tell me if that's a terrible idea, right? I mean, that's the kind of organization you want. Is if somebody feels like that's not the right thing, I want them to be able to say, "Hey, that's not right, and let me tell you why." But like you said, you've got to channel that in the right way and not have people just bludgeoning people with trying to just use their passion and their engagement to get what they want individually. So I think keeping kind of that team focus is very important.
I think as CEOs, we are at risk of having people not challenge us just because of the business card and the title. And there's nothing drives me nuts more than that. Like, we're in a executive team meeting or company meeting, and to say something that goes unchallenged, and when there's silence that kind of comes after any kind of passionate statement or opinion I may have, I love it when people challenge that. I want that to be the culture in the company, so that we can have that open discourse and get to the right answers quickly, knowing that the first answer is not always the best one.
Yep.
Yeah, we're coming to the end, gentlemen, of our conversation, and as we close, we're here recording this right at the end of 23, moving into 24, and as you think about 24 and this subject of engaged, high performing, and thereby then happy people, as you think about that in your organization, what's the 1 degree, 2 degree shift that you're going to be putting your attention on in a new way in 24 to move the needle even more on this? Simon, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's eating our own dog food, to be honest. We need to be using the technology that we're telling our customers is going to change, their performance, their industry, or their performance within that industry. And, we as a species, I think we're at a really unique inflection point in history where for the first time ever, there is a type of technology that has now prevailed itself over the last 12 months that is coming into, industry in a secure way that could completely change the way people do their jobs. And so think of the example I gave earlier around research coordinators who are overwhelmed, stressed out, tired, but passionate and don't want to leave, but just, they're not finding that work-life balance. Think of a CRO, like Nick's firm, that company that is out there, doing, a hopefully great job for companies like Dave's to, run these clinical trials and make them successful, get the right patients. We have a really unique opportunity to utilize technology, in other words, the new type of artificial intelligence, to take away the boring, banal work that most people have to do so they can get to what's at or above their pay grade. And that gives them happiness, that gives them fulfillment. So if you can take away some of the stuff that really does reduce their quality of life, then and we're now seeing this in almost every persona across the industry, that this is possible. That just needs to be adopted. So my message for companies, whether they're biotechs, CROs, providers, anyone, is jump in and embrace new technology because it could provide a huge unlock that we haven't seen before.
Awesome. Nick, what about you? What's that 1 degree, 2 degree shift that you'll be focusing in the new year to drive even more engagement and thereby better performance?
Well, I take Simon's rallying cry, and we'll definitely be looking at where AI can replace some of those mundane kind of take data from one spreadsheet, put it into another. Why not have AI do that for you so you can focus on the so what from that? But, perhaps a little bit more mundane and grounded, in terms of the answer to your question. We've done a pretty nice job at setting kind of corporate goals and having that transparency around our progress towards those goals. What we want to do is take those goals and objectives down another level, to the point Dave was making earlier about giving meaning to that site activation team or that clinical monitoring team or that data science group. We want to make sure that we've really drilled down into the things that they're doing that contribute to those programs, because we recognize we weren't doing as good a job at connecting their work to the actual tangible progress that they were making. And so those kind of next level of metrics and feedback loops are important to us as a company.
Awesome. And for you, Dave?
Yeah, I agree completely with what the points that Nick and Simon have made. We're at a really interesting time in history right now. And then Simon mentioned that we have a transformational technological explosion that's happening right now that's impacting and will impact everything that we do, and embracing that and trying to figure out how to use that to get better and to be more efficient and more productive at what we do, and to really transform day to day what we're doing to try to develop these new therapies is something that we're spending a lot of time thinking about. How do we incorporate that? And at the same time, we also have a moment in time here where the demographics of the world are changing so rapidly. For the first time in the history of our country, we are on the brink of having more people over 65 than under 25. We've always had a pyramid demographic where we've had a lot of young people and very few old people. And we're getting to a point where we have more and more old people. We're kind of turning into a column, and pretty soon we're going to be an inverted pyramid. And, how does that impact healthcare? There's this massive revolution that's happening to start thinking about how do we keep people alive longer and keep them healthier? and what role can we play in that, and where is our niche there. And so and then also in the context of the economy has been tough. It's never been harder to raise money in our industry than it is right now. It's been very, very challenging, and so we're asking people to do more with less. And so it's, to me, necessity is the mother of invention. When you have hard times, it actually makes you incorporate what Simon talked about. Because I have to, I'm going to use this technology because I don't have another choice, right? I have to make the dollars I have go farther. And so I have to be more productive. I have to get more with less. And so that's not an easy thing as an organization to say, guys, we got to do more and we don't have as much money to do it. Those are not easy things. And hopefully this is a cycle, and hopefully we're at the bottom of this cycle, but we just don't know. We don't know how long that's going to take. And we're committed to our mission. We're committed to what we're trying to do, and we're going to find a way to do it. And I really am a big believer that the hard times actually make the best outcomes. And when we're pushed to do something beyond our comfort and beyond what our normal way of doing things, where we have to make things go farther and do more with less, that's when big breakthroughs happen. And I think we're seeing that right now. And it's an exciting time. It's the best of times and worst of times, but it's the time I think that we're going to see amazing revolutions happen in the next few years. I just am super excited about the future.
Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your insight and wisdom. I'd love for you each to take a second and tell us, if we want to know more about you or what you're up to in the world, where can we go? Simon?
Yeah, well, anything to do with artificial intelligence in drug discovery, clinical trials, or commercial targeting, we have a great software platform. Our website is ryght.ai, and you can sign up to try the tech out as a single user, or even call us for your company's needs. I'm Simon, Simon, at ryght.ai.
Awesome. Nick?
You can find me on social media on LinkedIn. So Nick Dyer, Dyer, nick.dyer@catalystcr.com. And catalystcr.com is our website as well. So if you have needs in the oncology trial space coming into the clinic or already in the clinic, or if you've got the need for an FSP, functional service provider model, we've got our Catalyst Oncology and Catalyst Flex models to explore for you and with you.
Great. And Dave?
Yeah, you bet. So our website is HaliaTX, so HALIATX.com. And I'd be happy for anybody to connect with me on LinkedIn, David Beers, BEARSS, on LinkedIn.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the notes that go with this episode. And thank you. I've learned a lot, and my clients are going to benefit from this conversation. So thank you, gentlemen, so very, very much.